Kia ora and welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm William Chen.
I'm Max Tarrant.
And I'm Sarah Watt.
Each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective, with some connection. It could be the same director, same actor, or similar theme. And this month we're discussing Valerian, The City of a Thousand Planets, which came out this year, and The Fifth Element, which came out in 1997, 20 years ago. And the connection is they're both space opera films by Luc Besson. So let's hear about these films. William, do you want to give us a bit of an overview of both of the movies?
Of course, and I think that is actually very apt because they are very, very similar, especially if you watch them back to back. So both movies are very, very out there space operas from the mind of Luc Besson. They are set 20 years apart, but they also really feel like a throwback to his youth. And I know he said in interviews that that's what he intended, especially Fifth Element, to be. They are both heavily influenced by the French and Belgian kind of comic book aesthetic, as well as storytelling techniques. And they both have to do with, shall we say, aliens and some sort of intergalactic war, a lot of politics that seem deep on a level but not so on another level, and of course the overpowering power of love.
Excellent, thank you, William. And it's worth saying that with Cinema in Context, we feel that the old film we can be as spoilerific as we like, but the new film, we keep it relatively spoiler-free, so we'll be following that today. And it's so great to have all four of us here, because for various reasons we haven't all been together for a while, eh? Mm-hmm. It's nice. Alright, who'd like to start us off? Valerian? I'll start us off, because I've written down Valerian, insert subtitle here, because I just think the length of this film is just ridiculous. Call it Valerian and stick with it.
Did you say the length of the film? Or
No, the length. Well, there's another.
I would say the length of the film and the length of the title.
The length of both films.
Let's talk about the length of the film soon, because I've got much to say. But honestly, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. I have to write it down because I can't remember it.
It's so descriptive.
Oh, it's just ridiculous.
But also so verbose.
Yeah.
And it must be purely because it is based on... Is that the extended title?
No. The comic book is called Valerian and Laureline.
I see.
And I don't
Which is an
quite
interesting
understand
point in
why they changed it for the movie.
Because they're both these movies are quite sexist, I think.
Because you're saying that because the source novel was Valerian et Laureline, and that this film is just called Valerian.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a point.
Well, let's talk about that. That's a nice thing.
Maybe they want to call it Valerian and Laureline, the City of a Thousand Planets. Prolong, a rope of sand.
Yeah, part one. I mean, that's the reality. I think they're anticipating this to turn into a series, into a franchise. Let's off the bat call it something that is going to be able to be changed so that it's relevant to the next film. But the sexism, that's interesting because I agree with you, particularly with Valerian, that there was some interesting dynamics going on there. What I will say is that the love story in Valerian is just, they kind of shoot themselves in the foot because they sort of play their cards right in the first scene. Mm-hmm. There's no tension.
The love stories follow a similar trajectory, I realised, only on watching The Fifth Element. And I should say that I had not seen it back in the day, as it turns out. It was completely fresh to me watching it post-Valerian by a couple of days.
I have not seen it either.
Oh, you hadn't?
No.
Right.
The Fifth Element, yeah.
Yeah. Despite having heard of it and knowing it was absolutely legendary. And yes, so there are similarities in both films where you have a lead male character called Major, or Major someone or other, Major Valerian, or just Bruce Willis's character, Major. Don't know what his actual name was.
Corbett Dallas.
Right.
Corbett.
Dallas, of course. And very early on they meet the supposed love of their life and express it as such. Particularly in Valerian, as you say, that's sort of like right from the beginning. He's like, I want to be with you, and then it becomes just sort of a tale of where you have to prove yourself, sort of.
Well, the difference though between Fifth Element and Valerian is that they've got a previous relationship. We meet them within the first 15 minutes, and they're pretty much everything that you need for their supposed his proposal to her to work is already there. We don't see it develop.
Yeah.
Fifth Element, the love interest, she doesn't come in until about half an hour into the film. We already know who Bruce Willis is. I feel like they develop their characters much better in Fifth Element than they do in Valerian.
And speaking of, if they want to make Valerian a franchise, then that core relationship is already kind of kind of completely drawn out. So there's not going to be much more to.
Do they want to make it a franchise? Is there
I
talk
don't know.
of that,
I
or
figured
you're just
that
speculating?
I'm speculating. I in some ways, it's one of the only ways I can understand why they made the film.
Well, the thing
Is that Besson wanted a cash cow?
No. Valerian has been his passion project, apparently. He's been wanting to make that film ever since that was his favourite graphic novel as a child.
He's a huge fanboy of the series, and you can see from Fifth Element, like this. I haven't read a lot of the comics, but you can definitely see so much of the design is taken straight from Valerian and Laurel.
Absolutely,
the shape of the spaceships and how the very famous Fifth Element poster with all the taxi cabs in Space New York. It's something straight out of that kind of comic.
Yes, and the little pet, the little creatures that they were cuddling are the same creatures. The cityscapes are very, very similar. And I was going to comment on the world building in Valerian, which was one of the pluses of it, where it was fantastic. And then watching Fifth Element, indeed, same sort of thing. I think it's impossible nowadays not to hark back to Blade Runner.
Yeah.
But forgive them,
there are explicit references with, I've written his name down, where is he? Brian James, who played Leon in Blade Runner, and he plays General Monroe in the Fifth Element. So there are overt references to Blade Runner in Fifth Element.
And I found also in Valerian lots of setting nods to Star Wars with the bars and the markets and that sort of thing. And the Starfighter.
Avatar, possibly.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And he references Fifth Element in there with dialogue. And there's a line about your hat. Nice hat is mentioned in
He's a very intertextual director, isn't he? Because Fifth Element also then references lots of Star Wars and...
With the Princess Leia here.
The way I wanted to describe it was a quirky French near spoof of Star Wars mixed with Indiana Jones.
It was very Indiana Jones, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then a bit mummy-ish as well for me. But but the thing with Besson is, as much as neither of these films would I particularly want to watch again, both of them, I feel, would have benefited from being probably high or drunk, and that's not something that I do to watch films, but 20 years ago I might have, and I can see why people 20 years ago would have loved The Fifth Element, particularly if they were having a very relaxed night at home. But the thing that I admire in both films, personally, is that both are clearly Luc Besson's passion projects. Apparently, Fifth Element he'd been writing since he was 16.
Yeah.
And so he's so committed to it. Whereas we watch so much crap nowadays that you think, what a sloppy film, that director, it was a cash cow for him, or he hardly cares. And this guy really cares. And I give him quite a lot of points for his commitment to it. And if he wants it to be cray-cray, and it's not quite up my alley, I don't mind, because he's committed to his cause and he's giving it everything. You know what I mean?
I fully agree with you. I think it endears you to the film, because my perspective on these two movies is, Valerian, I wasn't a huge fan of. I've got a lot of issues with it. It was generally enjoyable, though. I went with my brother-in-law, my brother, and my nephew, who's 10 years old. I saw Fifth Element as an 11-year-old, and it's one of my favourite films, I think probably for similar reasons with me talking about Independence Day, William, and your kind of view of Independence Day. And I really enjoyed rewatching The Fifth Element last night for the probably 30th or 40th time.
Right.
I hadn't watched it in a number of years. And I saw a few cracks that I'd never seen before, as you do when you go back. But for me, everything that I felt Valerian failed in, I was quite confident in my perspective that Fifth Element fulfilled it for me.
And maybe for your 11-year-old nephew, Valerian
could
be his Fifth Element, despite the fact that it's an hour longer and an hour too long. But yeah,
I think connected with that as well is that I remember Fifth Element, very similar circumstances with my dad, my uncle, potentially a cousin. We went along to this great event film, and and then also it became part of our family video collection that everybody kind of quotes and still
that's
quotes.
really
See,
meaningful.
that's what I was wondering. So it was quite a significant film when it came out.
I
Just
think
because
so.
I've asked it, I mentioned it to different people, assuming that they'd know what I meant, and quite a few people didn't pick up on it. Like, I've kind of heard of it. But for me, it was quite significant. And I had a similar, I think I really liked it. It was the period of time in my life that it just kind of worked. It was like this first kind of slightly more gritty, some aspects of a gritty sci-fi. And seeing kind of the anti-hero of Bruce Willis just kind of chimed quite nicely. But I do think he's a bit of a, do you think Luc Besson is he a bit childish in his mind though as well, like is he a bit he's not interested in substance very much, is he?
No.
No. And when he is, that's when the movies start to really go downhill. So I'm happy.
Well, no, but you say that.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved. I think we called it it was called The Professional but it was called Leon, wasn't it? In other places, and the relationship between Jean Reno and Natalie Portman, particularly when she's newly orphaned. And that beautiful sort of surrogate father-daughter role that grows, that's really nice. And that is a terrific movie.
Well, you know what about, has anybody seen Subway? Because I really like that. And that must be a much lower budget thing. And I think he really benefits from having the challenge of, he's got this creativity which he manages to infuse in it, but having the lower budget just reins him in a bit, and
it's like there
it
was a
gets
lot
some
of
really interesting stuff out of it.
It's like that with a lot of visual directors.
The Peter Jackson effect.
Peter Jackson, Terry Gilliam.
What, when they get too much
even
money?
George Lucas.
Sam Raimi.
Well, old George Lucas is fantastic. Like his first 3 films, American Graffiti, THX, whatever it is, blah blah blah, Star Wars, is just, they're really tight.
Yeah.
And,
Even though they're lo-fi.
They're lo-fi,
Yeah.
and when they kind of have these budgets, they just go crazy. I think my biggest criticism of Valerian is that it was too long.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that it was too long. I mean, it was just too long in terms of time, like sitting in the theatre. But I got bored the moment that the story diverged from the Avatar-esque story, and it was Valerian and Laura, whatever her name is. Laureline. It's like lost in the city, and he's trying to get Rihanna. I was like, what is this?
I
This has got
didn't
nothing to do
necessarily
with-
mind that for some reason.
For me,
it was weird. It was definitely way off track. Like there were definitely moments where you're just like, where have we gone?
Yeah.
When did we turn off so far?
It reminded me so much of Barbarella, how it's like, let's go on this little sub-adventure.
Yeah.
Let's do this little thing, nothing to do with the main plot.
But see, I don't mind because I think the main plot's so kind of spurious in some ways. Anyway,
Yeah,
Well,
right.
like I don't have any emotional connection to it
No,
necessarily.
neither. Didn't care what happened.
So it didn't really matter. All I really wanted was the first hour and a half of Valerian, because it was just enjoyable. But then I was just like, it could stop now. I wouldn't even need to know the resolution.
That's what I thought. Well, that's how I felt. And then I was like, but where's this Rihanna person? And then when she came in, it did actually lift it for me, but purely as a set piece. So for me, Rihanna lifted the film because I got bored with it. However, if I think back to a little film from 1952, I think, called Singing in the Rain, there is a seemingly non sequitur sort of whole dance number that I remember for the first 20 years of my watching that film thinking, why is this kind of stuck in the middle of this film? It stops the plot, goes off on this fancy, and in a way, when Valerian does go to the nightclub and watch the shapeshifter, it's a little bit like that. You know, it doesn't add anything. It then does become a bit of a device.
But we did talk about that when we talked about Singing in the Rain with La La Land. I mean, that was one of my biggest criticisms. I love Singing in the Rain, but it is a weird tangent, that part of the film.
Yes.
I have... I mean, if the film's set up to be that kind of story, it kind of can work. Barbarella made no excuses about the fact that was the type of story it was. But with this film, that seemed to be so driven by the storyline about this danger in the middle of the city, it just killed the momentum for me.
But maybe, okay, so here's this guy, French film director, right, who never went to Hollywood but makes these kind of hybrid-y, Hollywood-y, European-y films.
And he's quite prolific as well. He pumps out scripts that other people are using all over the show.
And he's cast in both films, he's cast a supermodel as the female protagonist. I can say much about both Mila and Cara Delevingne, who actually I've fallen completely in love with. I think she's absolutely enchanting.
Cara.
Laureline.
Yeah, she was the most interesting.
I thought she was fabulous. I think she's
Sarah. She actually plays the Enchantress in Suicide Squad. So
I heard that, but I haven't seen that. But to me, she is enchanting.
Yeah,
I thought she was fantastic. Out of all the performances in that movie, she was.
Well, I mean,
She
especially
has
if you compare her to the male lead,
absolutely.
He's terrible.
And actually, I think that Mila, is it Jovovich or Jovovich, has a similar kind of supermodel-y sort of chutzpah, however you mean to say it. You know, she has a real confidence. And both women sashayed through those films, notwithstanding they're wearing Jean-Paul Gaultier kind of like seatbelts for outfits. But they were not just eye candy models. It wasn't like God bless it, Mad Max Fury Road, where they cast all those Victoria's Secret models in the background, and they looked like just backgrounds, Victoria's Secret models. Do you know what I mean? Both Cara and Mila actually have character and charisma, and they own their scenes, which I thought was terrific. So all I'm saying is, so therefore, maybe Luc Besson's like, Rihanna says she'll be in my film. Because 20 years ago, Luke Perry said he'd be in his film.
Yeah, that was random.
I know.
Well, it wasn't random for 1997.
It was random in the sense that he got, like 5th billing or something?
Yes.
I was like, who's Luke Perry? And then I looked up, I was like, he's the guy at the start.
He was massive in the 90s. He was huge. He was Beverly Hills 90210. He was Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
And so back then it was almost stunt casting in the
Yeah.
way that Rihanna is sort of, God bless her, stunt casting, sort of,
Yeah.
I thought, she was fine. I thought she had a fine role.
I really liked her character.
Yeah.
I just thought they should have introduced her earlier in the movie, and it would make the whole thing make so much more sense.
Yeah.
How she exits the movie is just such poor writing.
I agree.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but I have very rarely seen such a scene done with such, let's move on.
Yeah, it was really poor. I tell you what, in terms of the other performances in Valerian, actually, there's one person that I thought did a reasonable, okay job, and his name's Sam Spurrell. He was the kind of good commander that was supporting. I thought he did quite a nice
with the
job.
evil face. He plays evil characters in most sort of procedural sorts of films. If I'm thinking of the same guy,
he did some nice work. I thought for what he had. But man, if I ever was wondering why we haven't seen Clive Owen in a while,
oh my gosh,
so
disappointing.
It made me sad because remember Children of Men?
Yeah.
And remember how great he was
Even
in Children of Men?
inside job, everything.
Even shoot 'em up. I mean that was
Croupier. I love Clive Owen. So yep.
And in this movie, he's barking like a mad dog,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not much of the script. I mean, it's
the script is terrible.
very cartoon-ish.
But the dialogue is it's got no tension.
It's so expository.
It's really boring. I mean, and the main guy is a Dane Jahan. He was so boring.
I think that's why I find this complicated. Is that we talk about these being his passion projects, which he really loves, but then he kind of is just loose with them, considering that he loves them so much. Like the thing I felt with Fifth Element is a lot of it's rushed. Like there's parts where I'm like, this could be really amazing if there's a bit more attention to the mise en scène, the way things are kind of captured. But it kind of just there's so much that he wants to get through. I think and he just has to rush it or something like that.
Yeah.
See, I mean, Fifth Element. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Fifth Element. So I love. I mean, in terms of the script. I hear you, Max, in terms of rushing. There's definitely moments where it just jumps and you're like, okay. Then in terms of the script, there's some really little fun dialogue moments where it's cutting between scenes. People are saying something that links into what the other scene is saying. You're getting... there's that moment where they're talking about the Stones and it's cutting between Zorg, the Gary Oldman character, who's phenomenal.
He's fabulous.
In fact, I just want to say the cast in the Fifth Element, you've got Bruce Willis, Mila Jovovich, Gary Oldman, Chris Tucker, and Ian Holm. I mean, those five together
they were superb.
Are really strong, and their characters, I feel,
They're
they're
so
memorable.
memorable.
They're really
right,
memorable.
Yeah.
You could have action figures in
Ian
all five of
Holmes'
those.
character's
cool.
eh?
I know, even though he's playing, the straight man, but he has so much fun with it.
Yeah.
He always plays with a twinkle in his eye. I think all the time.
He gets drunk in the movie.
He's really fun, Ian Holm.
What I was going to say is that moment when they're kind of talking with the Zorg and then the Ian Holm character, and Mila Jovovich is explaining what's happened to the Stones, and you're getting the answer in one other scene. It's like the two simultaneous conversations, and they do it again. It's often about the Stones actually with the Zorg, and they're cutting between Zorg somewhere and the diva, and kind of for me that's really thrilling to watch. And the other stuff that I really enjoyed is like the scene where the way they've set it up, they're in the apartment and different people are coming to get Corbin Dallas to go to this trip, and he's sort of shuffling them into the fridge, and he's got one in the shower and he's got one in the bed, and then the police come in, and then it cuts to the airport scene. You've got all the various different people trying to get out of the ship, and just the farce of it and just the timing is really, for me, I think one of the strongest sequences in the film, that whole central section. Agreed.
I mean, there's not too much I want to say about them, but the big thing for me is the gender politics. And again, I don't know if this is deserving, but I feel like it goes back to perhaps a lack of maturity or a lack of awareness in Luc Besson. So, for example, with Fifth Element, it's just, I mean, when Mila turns up, Lilu, she's kind of this.
She's naked.
Sexualized, yeah, she's a naked woman.
And
there's
this colonel
a big
goes,
group
I
of
think I
men
can take
around.
a photograph or
Yeah,
something.
all these men looking
That's
at
right,
her,
yeah.
and it's kind of like it's sexualized in a way that hasn't really improved since Barbarella.
Yeah.
It's as bad as that. Like if all the men looking on and that comment.
And then dressing her in the Jean-Paul Gaultier seatbelt outfit.
And she's kind of given a little bit more strength by the fact that she breaks out and, you know, she's got a bit of power there. But at the same time, this is kind of like, it's still all about the men looking on at her as a piece of beauty.
Yeah.
This guy goes, oh, she's, you know, even
She's
when
perfect.
she breaks out, she's perfect.
Yeah.
Like, she's almost like a plaything. It's kind of like a rewriting of the Adam and Eve story, I felt like. She is reconstructed from this piece of a man, which was kind of interesting.
It is an interesting point.
I don't think it is a piece of a man though. I think it's
a
that's
piece
her.
of that.
It's a piece of her. She
Right,
is,
okay.
How she's encased. She's encased in that kind of
Right.
sarcophagus.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Do you know what's interesting about the perfect thing? Because you've just tapped into something that I noticed is at the beginning of Valerian, he says to her, "But I've been waiting for my perfect woman," and or she says something like, "Well, you're just waiting for your perfect woman," and he says, "I found her, and it's you." And that perfect thing didn't strike me at the time, but it did watching Fifth Element, because first off, Bruce Willis says on the phone, "I'm not going to be with anybody after my wife left because I'm waiting for the perfect woman." Then he says, when he sees Mila Jovovich, "I met this girl and she's perfect." And then the dudes, the scientists, kind of military guys say she's perfect, and then other people say she's
The
perfect.
priests.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I thought about this idea of the perfect woman, which of course is not investigated at all. It's just said
And she is the only woman
in the film. But
Yeah,
I did
pretty
notice
much.
at least that there was a lot of talk about perfection.
I think it's just that juvenile nature of the film. I fully
Yeah.
agree
That's
with both of
right.
you.
That's
It's
right.
It's
It's
something
lack
from
of
the mind of a
awareness.
teenager. It's,
And all the other females in the film, like the policemen, these dirty, disgusting policemen from Fifth Element, rock up to this McDonald's kind of place, and the woman serving it is wearing this low cut kind of top.
Yeah.
All the attendees are women with low cut tops or kind of boobs popping out. Chris Tucker gives one an orgasm.
Just by talking to her.
Just by talking to
Despite
her.
the fact that he is
yeah,
camp as a
true.
row of tents.
so he does more than talk to another one of them
What?
in terms of orgasms. But what I will say, to flip that on its head, because I fully agree with you in terms of the representation of women, you do, however, have some very what's the word? Non-traditional depictions of men in both films.
Yeah.
You've got the Chris Tucker character, which is fascinating. He's this incredibly over-the-top, flamboyant. You know, a lot of feminine qualities in the way
I
that
think
he's portrayed.
I think he's a bit
wearing a low cut top. And
Yeah.
everything, yeah.
I think he's a bit James Brown. I think he's James
yeah.
Brown modelled.
Oh, that's
They
James
talk-
Brown
interesting.
has a very crazy haircut like this, and also took on these quite feminine kind of
Well,
characters.
it's Michael Jackson, a Prince, as well. I mean,
Yeah, that's true,
clearly-
yeah.
I think they want a Prince to play that part as well.
Wow.
And then in Valerian, you've got the kind of leader of the alien race, which I'm pretty sure is voiced by a woman.
He is, yeah.
Yeah, the father, the chief. And it's interesting. I just I don't really know what else to make of it. But
Well,
And then at the end, of course, the big win in Valerian for Laura Lean is that Valerian strikes off all his other conquests from his list, which was pretty just like, oh, okay, for you, you know what? I'll do the ultimate sacrifice and forget all the other women that I've kind of
Conquered.
conquered.
Although I
So
mean,
it kind of let's erase history.
Yeah.
that ending is horrible. But I really liked what they did with the characters earlier on. I thought it was a shocking bit of writing in a movie where the writing was not great. When kind of spoilers for the end, kind of not. But Valerian is going to do something stupid, and he's like, "I'd be willing to sacrifice myself for you." And Laura Lean has a line saying, "You know, I don't want you to die for me. I want you to trust me." And it's it's kind of undercutting this raw machismo that's kind of going through the movie in the way that's really deserving of nuance, and it's so strange. Like I don't know if you guys picked that up as well.
interesting.
I did pick up that both female characters, particularly Laureline, she makes some of it reference to "I'm here to protect you," or "I'm here to save you," or maybe it's just that in the plot he's the one who needs to be saved, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in maybe it's in Fifth Element, I think in Fifth Element she says, "I protect you," and I thought, well, there's he's heading in the right direction in terms of giving the women a little bit more agency. Can I just shout out that, did you notice in The Fifth Element where Bruce Willis's character is holding the passed out Lilu?
Which he's constantly doing throughout the movie, carrying her around.
So he carries her around, which is, is not great for my feminism argument.
Literally an object.
But did you notice that, and then I think Ian Holm might be laid at their feet or something, and it's boom, it's just this beautiful shot of like the Pietà, is it Michelangelo's Pietà, which is the very famous statue of Mary holding a prostrate Jesus across her lap. And it's the same in Hannibal as well, where Hannibal's walking along with Clarice Starling in his arms, and that kind of shot gets used quite a bit. So good old Luke with the old classical art. But but anyway, thought I'd chuck that in.
I think it's the whole thing about her fainting. Like, it's not really clear why she's fainting all the time. She sort of gets hurt, and then sometimes she passes out, and then sometimes she's all fine again.
Maybe the seatbelt's too tight.
Sometimes she gets shot, and sometimes she's, and that only really struck me when I was watching it again. I sort of thought,
it's just a device, isn't it? For someone's got to save her.
Yeah, and yet she kind of has these moments where she's supposedly the strong female character fighting. I have to say that opera sequence for me still was amazing.
That is really cool.
It is amazing.
It goes back to a few other movies, It kind of gives you little inklings of different moments. Like, for some reason, it reminds me of Mulholland Drive.
The Silencio.
Which is obviously an amazing scene, and it also, for some reason, probably just through that, reminds me of Blue Velvet.
It's we've seen it in the cinema as an 11-year-old, and subsequently with my family. It's incredible. We would often put it on just to rewatch it, and we'll share making of videos from YouTube about it, and we'll share other people trying to sing it. And,
cool.
There's some really good scenes in Fifth Element.
And it's one of the moments where the movie actually takes time to slow down, take a step back, and just let you breathe in the scene as well.
And do something very high quality.
Yeah.
Very valuable, that time that you...
So I looked up trivia buff because I love my opera, and I looked it up, and it's Donizetti, and it's Lucia di Lammermoor, and it was actually sung by a proper, I think, Albanian opera singer.
Cool.
But the actress who plays it, I was surprised and interested to read, is Mai Wen, who's a French actress turned film director who made Police and a bunch of other films that go to Cannes usually.
Oh, cool.
And so even 20 years ago, she was the sort of the blue-faced alien form.
You know what the connection is with that as well, isn't it?
No.
She was Luc Besson's fiancée at the time, and the actress that they wanted didn't turn up on the day, so she stepped in.
Wow!
And then by the end of the movie, he left her, and he got engaged with Mila Jovovich. Yeah.
Really? And did he marry Mila Jovovich?
No, they broke up a few years later.
So they didn't get
that makes sense. She's like his muse, and he just writes that into the storyline.
Wow.
She's
dies.
literally outside of the movie. You know how they're always talking about how perfect she is? That's him kind of going like...
Going, actually, yes, she is.
She's so perfect.
Did you know, and you'll know because you've watched it a million times, I didn't know though, till I was like, what language is she speaking? Because a lot of those words sounded very Italian. And then I looked it up, and the divine language, apparently, and you may know this already, but apparently she and Besson, or mainly Besson, wrote this language specially with 400 words. That's the sum total of their language. And because she speaks, Mila Jovovich speaks 4 languages anyway, she was able to very quickly learn the divine language. And by the end of filming, apparently, they were having full conversations with each other. How rad is that?
Well, obviously they enjoyed those conversations, and it built some intimacy there.
It's their 5th language, and then maybe the 6th language of love. So yes.
I have to say that the sort of, again, like I juxtapose the two films, because for me, the music in Valerian was really bad, but not bad in the sense of in and of itself, but just the way it was paired with the film. It was there's a lot of times where I was like, oh, this music's taking me out of the film. I'm noticing the music for the wrong reasons, and I was really disappointed to find out that it was Alexander Desplat, because he's awesome. And
but he's also a muso for hire, I've decided. I mean, he obviously is, like, literally, but what I mean is I think he'll just do what people tell him that they want.
Yeah, right, okay. I suppose I can't think of anything too memorable he's done.
Well, his work with Wes Anderson for Grand Budapest Hotel and Fantastic Mr. Fox.
Yeah, he does.
Those 2 scores.
He has done beautiful stuff.
Well, I didn't know
but now he just does everything, so...
Mind you, a lot of composers do that. Like Hans Zimmer does that, and he has some incredible scores. And then sometimes you watch a film and you go, "Oh, what was that music?" Oh, it's Hans
but
Zimmer.
also we've said about Hans, I think, in a previous podcast, he just reuses his content. What a repurposer of content! That guy.
Well, what I will say is that the music in Fifth Element, I mean, for me is a highlight. It's dated now in terms of some of those 90s sort of...
Those
Heck
beats.
yeah.
But just the melodies, and I didn't realise until this viewing that a lot of the music with Lilu, when she's walking around the city for the first time, is the opera that's sung later on. I didn't even pick that up before.
I didn't either.
Cool.
But just there's a lot of different instruments that come in through the film. Characters have their own kind of themes. There's even that lovely moment right at the very end of the Fifth Element when the Lilu's exploding light out of her face, where there's just a twinkling kind of version of the score. Yeah, for me the music in Fifth Element is memorable compared to the forgettable music in Valerian.
I do have a note here to myself though that says awful incongruous music in the Mila capture scene, pure ridiculous. So I couldn't qualify that for you, but I remember it just seeming completely at odds with what was going on.
When she's flying around the city with the taxi.
Not early on, later on when maybe are they capturing her? I don't remember now, but anyway, but the music is ridiculous. And Matthew Kassovitz is in both films. That was the only other connection I could find.
Who's there?
Matthew Kassovitz was the lead in Amélie, and he's the director of La Haine, the Hate, that classic French hard-out film from the olden days, and a French actor, basically.
Who does he play in Fifth Element?
He is just the lad, he's not the next-door neighbour, is he? He's the guy who knocks on the door right at the beginning, and Bruce Willis opens the door, and he's all like, turn the gun around. Oh, he's a mugger, is that what it was? Because I was like, what is this? Yeah. He's like, no, you have to take the safety catch off. He's that guy being all
right,
and I couldn't find him in Valerian at all. I saw he was in the credits, didn't recognise him at all. So don't know.
What I'll say about Valerian is that there's that sequence in the film where they go to the big market and it's a big open space.
That blew my mind.
Which feels very episode one.
I like aspects of it, but I was confused sometimes as to what the rules were. Like I wasn't 100% sure. For me, it didn't sell as much as it could have because
did it really exist, or was it just virtual reality?
All that kind of stuff.
Who could see it?
Yeah, who could see who? What could you do? That confused me, and also that's right. That's what took me out of it. When he's in the desert and he bangs on the manhole and he drops to great lengths in the alternate reality, I'm like, well, where's he dropping back in the desert space? And then they never revealed that, and I thought, I'm really confused.
Was there a manhole as well?
Well, yeah, I don't know.
It was how does he get back up to the surface?
He took a lift.
Yeah.
Back up, and then there was no
would
lift.
definitely be a lift in the other world, not in the...
It was just a bit, that for me, was just a bit
man,
confusing.
that might be a huge flaw.
I don't know what's going on. Can't figure out.
Otherwise, it was because we haven't really given it the credit it deserves in terms of the crazy ideas and some of these amazing set pieces that it does have. The visuals, we should have said that at the start. This is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I would actually say, and I talked to you, Max, about this afterwards. I would say Valerian is probably one of my favorite movies of the year so far. I loved it, and mainly for the visual stuff.
Yeah.
It was too long. The ending sucked. But for the first hour and a half, I was just so happy watching it. And mostly because of the world building and the visual stuff, and you just don't see this stuff anymore.
No.
And what we were saying about the auteurness of it all. This is someone who just wants you to see what he sees in his head with millions and millions of dollars and really good special effects, really good makeup, and it was fantastic. And that sequence and a lot of the sequences around it were just super cool. And I just can't think of anything like that's ever been put to film.
Yeah, I agree. I felt like I was seeing things I hadn't seen before, and not just in a Avatarian way or a Hobbit at 48 frames per second way, but I felt like, wow, this is still making me think, goodness, cinema has a purpose, it has new stuff to show us. And then I got bored with it.
It's interesting you guys say that, because I had the complete opposite reaction, which was I was sitting there going, Guardians of the Galaxy, Star Wars, all these CGI fest films. So for me, I've actually written down visually some great imagery, but nothing hugely new. It was my in my reading of it, because I just felt I have such a fatigue with overly ambitious visuals that actually don't follow through in terms of tension or the action. I don't quite know what's going on with the action. I don't quite know where people are going, what's happening.
Oh, totally. I couldn't tell you a thing about the plot.
Yes.
No
For me it was like Star Trek movies have been out the last few years. All of our superhero films that have been coming out. Thor had a lot of colourful things in it. So for me it wasn't Avatar. It wasn't hugely new. So
what does it? No, I'm sure it didn't have a rating higher than M. Hey.
No.
I assume it didn't. But I was wondering what this kind of age range this is aimed at, because you feel with all the colour and the images, it's kind of going to be a young audience. But the way it starts up with the two, with Valerian and Laura Lean, it's kind of quite sexual. It's like lots of skin and kind of...
I heard that it does play a little young. Somebody told me that before I went in to see Valerian, actually. And I was a bit like, oh, and what they meant was, I suppose, that this would be maybe a Jungle Book audience or a slightly younger audience. And actually, as the film went on, I thought, with all these cute little creatures that multiply
that poop out.
pearls and things like that,
simple moral...
what's going to save the world? Love.
As in both movies, like I said earlier, love.
What is the fifth element? Love. I think maybe he didn't necessarily consciously aim it, purpose and audience it for a younger audience, but perhaps this stems again from the fact that both films, he started creating them in his mind when he was a teenager. And the second one's taken much longer to come to fruition, I
think it, for that the scene at the start where they're on a desert island, I think it particularly comes off strongly, the kind of sexual quality of it, because it's so big and there's boobs in front of you, and it's kind of like, God, I thought this was like, these guys are quite young and it doesn't feel quite right to me. It's just like, it's not out, but they're...
No, are you talking about live action boobs, or are you talking about Avatarian?
No, live action.
But this is the scene with Laura Lean.
They're at the beach.
They're at the beach on the bed.
And they're kind of lying all over each other.
Yes, right.
Maybe it just hit
He
me
keeps
as a
flipping
bit
her
more
over
visceral
and
because it was so big and it's so
I
high
was sitting
def.
next to my nephew, who's young, and I sort of thought, oh gosh. And I was like, well, for him, they're probably just two people, they're just sort of lying next to each other and flipping around and fighting and things. It's different when you're a kid.
Well, it's play fighting. I mean, even if he knows that they quite like each other, it wasn't... it didn't get all overt.
No.
And maybe it could have worked better if the casting was better, I would say. Because Dane DeHaan just makes
the dialogue
creepy.
Yeah.
But the dialogue as well.
I don't know. It seems like in the comics, and it seems like what they were going for is this very Harrison Ford, roguish charm. Dane DeHaan, every scene I've read a review that said he just looks like he's either about to cry or has just finished crying. He has these bags under his eyes, and he looks young and very tired through the entire movie.
And he typically plays quite cynical or almost villainous sort of characters.
Yeah.
He? So it was a really antithetical, if that would be the right word, antithetical casting choice. So who would have been better, I suppose, from his age?
There wasn't a clear sense of who the character was for me, so I couldn't even...
I guess he was supposed to be just the manly man, right? Who is sort of shown the error of his ways. So maybe, I don't know, one of these newfangled YA adaptations. Ansel Elgort, yeah. Or Chris Pratt. I don't know. Maybe that's going a little old. But they also, the two of them, they just look so much younger than they're supposed to look.
How old are they meant to be?
They're supposed to be adults.
Right.
I think that was
like
another.
children.
I think that was another reason why the kind of closeness was kind of weirded me out, because they look so young.
Yeah.
They look like they're like teenagers, and I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah, it was strange. I thought, like we were talking about before, her performance I was really enjoying when she was in the scenes, but he was.
She got better and better, I think. As well.
Yeah, and she had more to do as the film went on. I think. There was a couple of times where I was like. Actually talking about this whole relationship. In Fifth Element, there's that moment where Lilu is lying on the couch and he has to wake her up and he goes to kiss her, and she pulls out the gun and has the gun to his head and he's like, I shouldn't have done it. And then he's sort of, on the way home going, I shouldn't have kissed her. what do you think about that whole sequence?
Yeah, it's pretty bad, actually. Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
Well,
I
at
mean,
least he says I shouldn't have.
knows.
At least he
Yeah.
says I shouldn't have kissed her, I suppose.
And she's Mila has a gun to his head.
Look, Sleeping Beauty, yeah, one of the oldest stories in the world. Nobody's done a twist on that where she wakes up and cries date rape. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean, though? So
Disney
perhaps it was supposed to be just like I'm so in love with her I can't help myself, rather than any sort of sexual assault sort of thing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we may as well do. Anyone have anything they're burning things to
just
say?
one more thing, which again, this is the first time I watched Fifth Element. I guess I never watched it because my uncle, who was a entertainment journalist around '97, had gone to a press screening and told us, "Don't see this movie. The Fifth Element is love."
So you remember that all your life?
I've never,
Wow.
gone to because of my uncle. But did you guys get seeing it from a very fresh perspective? So much of it just seemed very strangely linked to other sorts of movies, from Terry Gilliam,
I was thinking a lot of 12 Monkeys.
Jeunet as
Yes,
well.
yes.
From just that kind of cluttered, handmade quality.
Yes. Yeah.
When the aliens first appeared, it was like something straight out of Monty Python.
Yes.
And everything, I love that stuff. Everything's very, very physical. Even like how they mix the CG with matte painting with like practical effects.
In the Fifth Element.
Yeah. Just you've never seen anything like that
True.
before, and I don't think we have since. So that was super cool. And also all the Gilliam-esque kind of digs at modern society, or a kind of distorted version of our world with the cigarette dispenser and all this a lot of satire. Also a little bit like RoboCop and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Which was
totally.
not something that I realized before I watched.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's. I mean, like I said, I'm a massive fan of this movie, so I love all that stuff. And the in-camera work in Fifth Element, it always sells an image so much better than the overly CGI. So even though Valerian has some incredible visuals, the fact that it is CGI, Tarantino talks about it. When it's CGI, you know it's CGI, so you know how the trick is done. The magic's not there. Whereas if it's in camera, you don't fully know how they achieved it. It's fascinating. All the model work, animatronics, the costumes. Just for me, this was. Visually, it's just a much more superior film than Valerian.
Interestingly, it felt like the aliens in Fifth Element. They really reminded me of the bad taste. The bad taste creatures, monsters. Which of course are Peter Jackson, but he wasn't involved in Fifth Element, except that Weta Workshop was involved in, or was it Weta Digital? Probably more likely, was involved in Valerian. So I suppose there are all these little. Intersecting sets.
Also reminded me a lot of the Vogons from the Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yeah,
adaptation,
that's
kind of
true.
big and hulking.
Yeah.
Did you want to make the final word, Max, before we wrap up?
Not particularly. There's not too much to say. I noticed I was done it about half an hour through, and I was like, okay, I'll just chill.
So you're like what Valerian should have been.
What?
Well, like you finished and you
Well,
stopped talking.
hopefully,
You stopped talking. So you
Just
go.
give it up.
That's right.
Leave on a high note.
Yeah. Bring in Rihanna, Max, next time you finish too early.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoyed our podcast, then please share it with your film-loving friends. You can listen to Cinema in Context through SoundCloud or through Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or even on YouTube, which are great places to leave us comments. Let us know what you think of this episode, and let us know what future films you think we could discuss and compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, and until then, ka kite anō.